You open the emergency kit, the one you spent real money on. The power bank is dead, not drained, dead. The LED flashlight with the digital mode switch will not respond. The weather radio you tested last month is silent. The solar charger panel looks fine, but the charge controller behind it produces nothing. One by one, you go through the items you stored, maintained, and trusted. None of them work. Not because the batteries died, not because you forgot to charge them. Because the event you prepared for is the same event that destroyed the electronics inside them. An electromagnetic pulse, often called EMP, does not test your supply. It tests your supply's dependency on circuit boards. And most people have never once checked which items in their emergency plan contain one. 8 commonly stockpiled items become non-functional after an electromagnetic pulse. All of them popular, all of them recommended. None of them worth the shelf space if this is the scenario that arrives. The item most people feel best about owning is the first one that fails. Portable power banks are the most commonly recommended backup power source in preparation content. Charge it, store it, check it every few months, and when the grid goes down, you have multiple phone charges, LED lighting, and basic device power. Under a standard outage, that logic is sound. Under an EMP, it is worthless. A power bank is not a battery with a plug. It is a battery managed by a microcontroller, regulated by voltage circuits, and monitored by a charge management system. Every one of those components is an integrated circuit. Integrated circuits are precisely what an EMP targets. The pulse induces voltage spikes across conductive traces inside the device. No external damage, no visible sign of failure. The case looks fine. The USB port looks fine. The device is dead. Solar chargers follow the same pattern with an additional layer of false confidence. The panel itself, the photovoltaic cells, will likely survive. Sunlight still generates current across silicon. But the charge controller that sits between the panel and your device, the component that converts raw solar output into stable, usable voltage, contains the same microprocessor architecture as the power bank. The panel produces energy your devices cannot use. The alternative is not obvious because it is not marketed the same way. Small solar panels with no integrated electronics paired with direct connect devices. Hand crank generators with purely mechanical output. Faraday cage storage for electronic units you want to protect. These exist. They work. They are not what most people buy because they are less convenient. And that convenience gap is the vulnerability. A power source you have stored and maintained and trusted that contains a circuit board you never thought about is not preparation. It is preparation built on an assumption you never tested. You loaded it with offline maps, survival guides, first aid references, a library of instructional videos. You downloaded everything, turned off the cloud dependency, and stored the phone in your emergency kit thinking you had covered the information problem completely. After an electromagnetic pulse, you are holding a glass rectangle that does nothing. Preppers increasingly use smartphones and tablets as digital survival libraries. Offline mapping applications, downloaded PDFs, medical references, plant identification guides, how-to videos for everything from wound care to water purification. As a preparation strategy for standard grid-down scenarios, this is genuinely smart. As a preparation strategy for an electromagnetic pulse, it is building your entire information system on hardware designed to fail under exactly that condition. A smartphone's processor, memory chips, display controller, and power management circuits are all microprocessor-based. All of them are vulnerable to an electromagnetic pulse. The content stored on the device is technically intact. The flash memory itself may survive. But without a functioning processor to read it, a functioning display to show it, and a functioning power circuit to run both, that content is as inaccessible as if it never existed. There is a common belief that powering the device off provides protection. It does not. An electromagnetic pulse induces current in circuits regardless of power state. The length of internal conductive traces acts as an antenna whether the device is on or off. Being powered down is not protected. The alternative is physical. Printed maps, paper field guides, laminated reference cards for medications, dosages, emergency contacts, and basic procedures. The information that survives an electromagnetic pulse is the information that was never stored on a circuit board. Anything that exists only in digital form exists only as long as the hardware that reads it. That is not redundancy. That is a single point of failure disguised as preparation. This is where the list starts to get uncomfortable. The items from here forward don't look electronic. They are electronic. A flashlight feels like the simplest device you can own. Battery, bulb, switch. For decades, that's exactly what it was. Modern LED flashlights are a different product entirely. Inside the housing, between the battery and the LED, sits a driver board. That board regulates current, manages voltage across different battery levels, and in most models controls multiple modes through a digital switch: high, low, strobe, SOS. Each mode is a programmed setting on a microcontroller no larger than a grain of rice. That microcontroller is an integrated circuit, and it will not survive an electromagnetic pulse, often called an EMP. The LED itself might survive. LEDs are simple semiconductors, and many would withstand the pulse. But without the driver board to regulate current, connecting a battery directly to the LED would either produce no light or burn it out instantly. The component that fails is not the one you see. It is the one you did not know was there. The pattern is consistent across the category. The more features a flashlight offers, the more circuitry it contains, and the more vulnerable it becomes. USB rechargeable flashlights add charging circuits. Variable brightness adds pulse width modulation controllers. Memory functions that remember your last setting add another layer of digital logic. Every feature is another point of failure. Headlamps follow the same architecture. Nearly every modern headlamp uses an identical LED driver design. The item that was supposed to make every other preparation functional after dark is itself not functional after an EMP. The alternative is unglamorous. Simple incandescent flashlights with mechanical switches and no circuit board. Chemical light sticks. Oil lamps. Candles with proper holders. These survived every century before microprocessors existed. They will survive this too. Stock at least 2 sources of light that contain zero electronics. The cost is minimal. The assumption that your current flashlight will work after an EMP is not. This is the item that changes the entire calculation. Every bug-out plan, every evacuation route, every supply run, every scenario where you drive somewhere to get something or to get away depends on one assumption. The vehicle starts. Modern vehicles are not mechanical machines with electronic accessories. They are electronic systems with mechanical components. Vehicles made after 2000 depend on electronic control units for ignition, fuel injection, transmission management, emissions control, and in many cases power steering and braking assistance. An electromagnetic pulse that destroys those control units leaves a vehicle that looks perfectly intact, sitting in your driveway, doing nothing. The engine is fine. The transmission is fine. The fuel in the tank is fine. The computer that coordinates all of them into a functioning system is dead. The common prepper belief that older vehicles are immune to electromagnetic pulse effects is partially true, but it is dangerously oversimplified. Pre-electronic ignition vehicles, roughly before 1980, have the best survival probability because their ignition and fuel delivery systems are purely mechanical. But the further you move past that date, the more electronic dependency is embedded into systems most people would assume are mechanical. Testing by the EMP Commission that is publicly available showed inconsistent results across modern vehicles. Some survived, some did not. Some started but lost critical functions, such as electronic braking or power steering. That inconsistency is the problem. You cannot know in advance whether your specific vehicle will function. Building an entire emergency plan around a maybe is not preparation. The alternative is not buying a truck from the 1970s. The alternative is building a plan that does not require a vehicle for the first 72 to 96 hours. Keep water within walking distance. Coordinate with your neighborhood. Arrange local supply access on foot. If the vehicle works, it is a bonus. If it does not, your plan still holds. Every other preparation that assumed you could drive somewhere to solve the problem just lost its foundation. The vehicle is not a tool in your plan. The vehicle is the assumption underneath all of them. This is where the assumption stops being an inconvenience and starts being dangerous. Every item before this one represents a loss of capability. This one represents a loss of safety. Digital thermometers, blood pressure monitors, pulse oximeters, glucose monitors. Every standard household medical device sold in the last 2 decades is microprocessor-based. The sensor may be simple. The display, processing, and calibration circuitry behind it are not. An electromagnetic pulse, EMP, doesn't care whether the device monitors comfort or monitors life. It destroys the same components either way. The scale of this dependency is difficult to overstate. Millions of Americans use CPAP machines for continuous positive airway pressure, nightly for sleep apnea. Without grid power, they rely on battery backups. But both the machine and most backup batteries contain the same EMP vulnerable circuits. The device isn't just without power, it's permanently non-functional. Insulin pumps and continuous glucose monitors represent an even sharper edge of this problem. These aren't convenience devices. They are life-sustaining systems managed by embedded microprocessors. An electromagnetic pulse, EMP, doesn't inconvenience these users. It removes the system they depend on to survive. The preparation gap is specific and dangerous. People stockpile medications. That's smart. But they monitor the conditions those medications treat with electronic devices that won't function after the event they are preparing for. The supply exists. The ability to assess whether and how to use it doesn't. Analog alternatives exist for some of these functions. Mercury or alcohol thermometers. Manual blood pressure cuffs with stethoscopes. Manual insulin syringes as a fallback to pump-only reliance. Urine glucose test strips that require no electricity. For every electronic medical device in your household, the question isn't whether you own it. It's whether you own the manual equivalent that works when it doesn't. The principle is the same one that runs through this entire list. The electronic version is the primary plan. The analog version is the one that actually survives. If this has been useful so far, A-like helps it reach people who could genuinely need it. Let's keep going. Communication is the second thing people plan for after food and water. Most of those plans are built on radios that will not turn on. Modern FRS and GMRS two-way radios are not simple analog devices. They use digitally synthesized frequencies, microprocessor-controlled channel selection, LCD displays, and digital squelch circuits. The case is plastic. The antenna is metal. Everything between them is a circuit board. An electromagnetic pulse, EMP, destroys the electronics and leaves you holding a plastic shell with a perfectly intact antenna attached to nothing functional. Weather alert radios follow the same pattern. The device marketed as your emergency information lifeline during a crisis contains the same microprocessor architecture as the two-way radios. Digital tuning, programmed alert channels, LCD frequency display. The radio that was supposed to deliver emergency broadcasts after a grid-down event is itself a casualty of the event. The common mistake is straightforward. People buy the radio, store it in a closet, and believe they have a communication and information plan. They have a plan that depends entirely on hardware surviving an event specifically designed to destroy that category of hardware. Owning the device and owning a device that will function after an EMP are two completely different preparations. The alternatives require deliberate effort to find. Analog AM and FM radios with mechanical dial tuning and no digital circuitry. These exist but are increasingly rare in retail. Simple analog CB radios with minimal electronics for short-range two-way communication. Both categories have real limitations in range and clarity compared to modern digital equivalents. That trade-off is the price of survivability. Faraday cage storage is the other option. A sealed metal container with an insulated interior that blocks the electromagnetic pulse from reaching the circuits inside. A metal trash can with a tight-fitting lid lined with cardboard is the common DIY approach. It works, but protection only exists if it is implemented before the event. The radio sitting in your closet right now, unshielded, is unprotected. The gap between owning a radio and protecting a radio is the gap where your communication plan quietly fails. The generator is the item most people consider the ultimate backup. It is also the most expensive item on this list when you discover it no longer works. Portable generators have changed fundamentally over the past 2 decades. Older models ran on simple principles: mechanical pull start, a spinning alternator, and a voltage output that fluctuated but functioned. Modern portable generators are engineered for clean, stable power delivery, and that engineering is built on electronics. Electronic ignition systems replace or assist the manual pull start. Automatic voltage regulators manage output to protect sensitive devices. Digital control panels display wattage, fuel levels, and runtime. Every one of these systems runs on a circuit board. Inverter generators, the category increasingly recommended for emergency preparation because of their quiet operation and clean power output, are the most vulnerable of all. Their entire output system is electronically managed. Raw mechanical energy is converted to direct current. then digitally inverted back to alternating current at a precise frequency. That inversion process is a microprocessor function. Without it, the generator produces nothing usable. The engine might run. The power output will not. The financial dimension makes this failure uniquely painful. A quality portable generator costs $500 to $3,000 or more. Discovering that investment is non-functional at the moment you need it most is both a practical collapse and a significant financial loss. No other item on this list carries that kind of cost. Older generators with purely mechanical voltage regulation and manual pull starts have the best survival probability. But these are no longer the standard product on retail shelves. Finding one requires deliberate searching. The broader principle is the thesis of this entire list in miniature. The more sophisticated the preparation, the more electronic dependencies it contains. The more electronic dependencies it contains, the more vulnerable it becomes to the one event that targets electronics specifically. A generator does not fail because it is poorly made. It fails because it is well made by modern standards that assume the electromagnetic environment will remain stable. That assumption is the vulnerability. Every item on this list was purchased with good intentions, stored with care, and built on one assumption nobody tested: that the electronics inside would survive the event they were stored for. The pattern across all 8 items is the same: a hidden dependency embedded in a device that feels simple but is not. The preparation that survives an EMP is not more gear. It is fewer electronic dependencies. For every critical function, power, light, communication, medical monitoring, identify one analog fallback with no microprocessor. That fallback is the real preparation. The cheapest preparation is the one still working when everything else is dark. Count the items in your emergency plan that contain a circuit board. That number is your exposure. Drop it in the comments.